Australia Day, folks, 2026 in Narracoopa, as you can see, is not that far away. We have an official bid there too. And I remember last year, the organisers asked Linda Payne, a local resident of King Island, to be the ambassador, which was quite unique, was different. But this year they decided to cross the Bass Strait and find an ambassador in Tasmania, which is not that difficult. And this year, 2026, we're going to invite and have present Judi Adams. Judi, welcome.
Good morning, Wade.
Now, I read a little bit of your bio, and my first thought is straight away, this is a professional volunteer.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? People get Australia Day awards sometimes for the work that they do that they're paid for, but I think the local hero category very much is around people that are doing things in the community, just going about their daily routine, doing the things they're passionate about, not expecting to be paid, let alone to be recognised for that work. So I think it was a big shock to me and a huge honour in 2018 to be announced the Tasmanian local hero. And yeah, it opened up a whole new world for me.
Now, go back a little bit further
Go back
because
a
you've
little.
been here longer than since 2018. Tell us a little
Yes.
bit. Tell us a little bit about
Tell us
your
a little
life,
bit about.
what you've
Yeah.
done, and
So in in a nutshell, I started out just sort of doing something to try and help people that had been diagnosed with breast cancer, having lost a very dear friend to breast cancer. And I just sort of started doing a little bit of fundraising. And then it turned into a morning tea, and then it snowballed from there. And before I knew it, I was running a lot of events around Tasmania around raising awareness about breast cancer and also raising funds for research. And in that process, I became quite a vocal and passionate advocate for the need for medical research into cancers. Obviously, breast cancer at that time, the outcome for people that had been diagnosed was far worse than it is fast forward to today. That's partly, well, a big part of that is due to the research and the dollars that have been thrown into all things pink. Breast cancer now, survival rates are astronomical compared to when I first started fundraising. So, yes, so that's sort of how it all began. But I also volunteered, people probably don't know, but I volunteered across all sorts of other events as well in my spare time. I worked full time. At one point, I worked full time, plus I had an evening job and I volunteered. So I used to say to people, I just did it off the side of my bed.
well, isn't it often that if you want
Often
something done, you ask a busy person?
Ah, yes, they do say that. So I moved to Brisbane in 2018 and replicated the things that I've been doing in Tasmania. So I got involved in volunteering at a local race day, quite a large race day that raises funds for Breast Cancer Foundation. I was involved with the Mother's Day Classic as a sponsorship manager in Hobart. So I managed to be invited to be the sponsorship manager for Brisbane, which was interesting because I didn't have the connections and know the landscape. And in Tasmania, I knew who was who in the zoo, but in Brisbane, I had to go and learn all about who the chief contacts were for that event. And I also had a campaign around lighting landmarks, which we used to do every year for breast cancer awareness. We did that in Tasmania and we moved that concept into Brisbane, which went well. And so I was going about my business, having a lovely life in Brisbane. And then in 2021, I had a shock cancer diagnosis of my own, but not a good one. So I was diagnosed in November. I went in to find out what was happening with some issues that I've been having with my health. And I woke up from having had what was going to be a small biopsy. I woke to discover that I'd had a very large major surgery. And the end result of that was I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So after my chemo and a period of being very unwell, I decided to return to Tasmania. I was unsure whether I would survive the diagnosis, so I decided I needed to be amongst my tribe. So I returned to Tasmania, somewhat broken version of the version that had left, and slowly clawed my way back out of that hole, and then turned my mind to the fact that what I knew to do was raise awareness, advocate for research, encourage people to have difficult conversations around their health and around mortality. And so when I returned to Tasmania, I became the ambassador for PanKind, the Australian Pancreatic Cancer Foundation. I also do some work with the Menzies Institute here in Hobart in their consumer advocacy space. I talk to student doctors about what it's like to be a patient and have a life-changing diagnosis, and how you cope with living with that, and how they can become better doctors in their future by listening to a patient's narrative. And I did some work, well, not, I shouldn't say work, but I lended some assistance to the Cancer Council with a number of their campaigns. And I also am an advocate, consumer advocate for Palliative Care Tasmania, particularly around the grief and loss programs and the Advanced Care Directive, and just encouraging people to have conversations around, well, for somebody who's living with a life-limiting illness, especially, sort of changing those perceptions about what palliative care is and what it means.
Is it almost ironic, Judy, that you do so much work and support and help for a form of cancer, and then you get hit by it yourself? It's almost.
Yes, it does seem like a strange irony. Um, I I suppose for me, I've instead of internalizing that and spending the rest of my life sitting in the corner rocking, going, "Woe is me," I've sort of turned that around. Instead of focusing inwardly on myself, I try and assist other people. I'm part of the National Pancreatic Cancer Support Group. So we talk to people who've been newly diagnosed. We meet by Zoom across Australia, and we offer people hope. Obviously, having somebody survive pancreatic cancer when the statistics are so grim, I feel I have some sense of obligation to help the people that come after me who are in that situation, who may not be so fortunate. So obviously, statistically, pancreatic cancer, only 89% of people diagnosed are even at a point where they have any hope of survival, because there's no diagnostic tool, and it's a hidden cancer. It's something that occurs within your body. You don't notice these subtle changes, and they present as other things. And so, unfortunately, for 89% of people with the diagnosis, often they're stage 4 inoperable. So I think every day I'm grateful that I had the support of such an amazing team, who probably, if they'd known what was living inside me, may not have taken that leap to operate. But once I was there and it all unfolded, they had to try and do the best that they could. And I was very lucky to have a very skilled surgeon in Brisbane at the Wesley, and just in the right place at the right time for that particular procedure. But yeah, I think out of that comes this, yeah, I almost want to save the world. I want to tell everybody about the dangers of not listening to your body and not being in tune with what's happening with your health, and that crazy thing where we say we're nothing without our health. But until you face that sort of diagnosis, it takes that to realize. We go through our lives making all these plans about the things we're going to do and the things we're going to achieve, and at the end of the day, none of that matters if you're not well enough to get out of bed in the morning. So yeah. and
Do
so
you think that people listen better to you now because you speak from experience?
well, I suppose now I'm advocating. So I've gone from pink to purple. So now I'm advocating, and I think it's about need. Like, I really think, that with the research, this is a major issue Australia is facing and the world is facing. That although it's not the cancer that everybody will get, it is certainly one of the most deadliest of cancers. They're saying that, within the next 4 years, it'll be our number one cancer death in Australia. So it's really important that we get the money channeled into the research and raise awareness so that people, A, get a diagnosis earlier if they're unfortunate enough to have pancreatic cancer, but also find some way to detect it earlier, so we don't have a screening. There's no way to screen for pancreatic cancer, unlike bowel or breast or prostate, for example. So it's really, and it affects men and women pretty much almost equally. And, with such grim statistics, I just can't believe that everybody's not jumping up and down with me and making lots of noise. So,
Is
yeah.
it like
Is it
when
like when
people deal with cancer? Is it like what do you suggest to people? And if you can, you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. But how to try to stay positive, not fall into a hole and almost give up and oh, what am I gonna do? And how can you be positive?
Well, I think, yeah, that's a lot of what happens in a cancer diagnosis, and then how you deal with that information is around your mental health and your ability to stay positive in a situation where often it's not great news. So, I think, as I said, for me, I channel it outward and try and focus on helping other people. For example, the pancreatic cancer support group that I'm in, the National Pancreatic Cancer Support Group, we meet monthly and we talk about the latest advances, and we have guest speakers, and we answer not only in the Zoom process but also one-on-one. We will help people who've been newly diagnosed or who have been diagnosed for quite some time. Anyway, we'll help them find answers to things they're having issues with, and if we don't know, we will contact the researchers, or we'll point them in the direction of where they need to go to find that information. Because I think one of the things about staying positive and having hope is you need to have information. You need to be fully informed about your health choices. And I can tell you now, with what's happened in my journey, which is a whole nother story, um, you've got to advocate for yourself. There's no one coming to save you unless you speak up, and only you know yourself and your body. Everybody's cancer is different. Everybody's cancer is unique to themselves. It's all part of that DNA process. And so I think, giving people the tools if they want to. Some people don't want to know. Some people just want their doctor to tell them all the answers. But for me, the person that I am, I want to know as much information and be informed, and then I can make an informed choice. And I think part of the reason that we have ambassadors in roles such as for pancreatic cancer, for example, is to be an advocate and to lobby, but also to be a symbol of hope and to encourage other people and be a support. Yeah.
Is it also that when people
that
get diagnosed with cancer, that it's almost like that somebody says, "Hey, listen, mate, you're not alone."
Yeah, I think that feeling of being able to talk to somebody, not your family, not your doctor, someone who's been through it. One of the things that the students at the Menzies Centre have said to me is, one of the things that they find really, really interesting about my talk is, they're going to be doctors, they're going to be delivering that news, but they don't know what it feels like. They don't know the emotions, they don't know the thought processes, and they don't know what people might want in that situation. So I think, yeah, you're right. That feeling that you're not alone in this and that there's somebody who understands, I think that's really, really powerful.
Now, I'm sure that
I'm sure that
Australia Day is a day of celebrating. I'm sure you don't want
I'm
to
sure
come
you
and
don't want
talk
to
there
come
all
and
about
talk
sad
there all
things
about.
and bad things. And what's your message in general with Australia
Yes.
Day?
Sure. So, yeah, my Australia Day address won't be anything to do with, I will be glossing over what it's not all about me, it's about us as a nation. So, personally, for me, I've always celebrated Australia Day. Little bit of personal history here. My maternal grandmother was born on the 26th of January 1906. She's a major part of my life, although she's no longer with me. She's with me in spirit. An amazing woman who did amazing things in her life, and she inspired me with her ability to the changes that she saw in her lifetime and the health issues that she overcame to become even to become a mother and a grandmother. And that to me is a thing that we celebrate in our family um, every year because it's her birthday. Um, and I suppose for me, I think Australia Day for me has being part of the National Australia Day Council, being an ambassador is a wonderful way for me to another way for me to give back to the community by being part of one of the things I really love is being part of the Citizen of the Year awards, hearing people's stories. It's really empowering to hear other people's stories. We're all unique. We all have our own history. We all have our own. We're making our mark on the world, and I think there's a lot to be said in being able to share those stories. It becomes part of what makes up our beautiful nation. I think sometimes people forget how lucky we are to live in Australia, in a country where we have the choices and we have a democracy and we're able to, people can reinvent themselves. I was very interested to read the bio on the King Island Council site about your mayor and see the various reiterations he has had in his life of reinventing himself. And I think I'm very excited to come to King Island. I think there's something very brave about going to live on a small island and making a home there. And I think I'm going to be very inspired to hear the stories from the people that I'll meet on the day. I gather it's a lovely community day with a lot of celebration, and I'm very excited and very honoured to be welcomed.
So by the sound of it, Judy, yeah, you really enjoy Australia Day, like many of us. What would you say? What are the key elements of Australia Day? What is important?
Well, I think, as I just alluded to, Wade, I think Australia Day is a day to reflect on those wonderful stories, respect that we're all shaped by our own experiences, and celebrate this wonderful nation and the stories that make that nation up.
What did you know about, or
What
do
did
you
you
know
know
about
about
King Island?
Well, in another lifetime, I was Woolworths Home Cook of the Year, the very first Home Cook of the Year. And so I'm a bit of a foodie. So I've always known that King Island has magnificent produce. Obviously, over time, things have, with changes in the economy, people have had to pivot. I gather that now large areas that once would have potentially been grazing areas or for cattle or for beef, for dairy, and now wind farms. So I'm going to learn a lot about wind farms. But obviously, I know some of your iconic brands. I know that you've got a number of distilleries there. So I'm looking forward to having a little bit of a tour. I've got a day to have a bit of a look around King Island before I have to leave. So I'm hoping to go and see some of the natural beauty and also explore some of the iconic King Island brands.